There we go. We got two winners going here for the Guess the Sequence contest. Congratulations to Dale. Dale has won. Dale,
Woo,
you're
he could
probably in
use
here.
that. He just bought a new house and it's
Yep.
huge. So an extra controller is not going to hurt him.
All right. So Dale guessed twice correctly, as well as Sherry and I think Chris. So the deck was stacked for him because he guessed correctly. Um, Next, we're going to do another poll of the Guess the Sequence contest.
And just remember while he's doing this, the Guess the Sequence contest is for everybody. So you don't have to be a club member to participate. This is open to the entire community of the PPU. Just when he puts up the guess, just go to do it.
And
Steve Stern.
good old Steven Stern. And to quote him from his post last week when he guessed in the contest, he said, "I have been with you since the beginning, and we thank you very much." Thank you very much, Stephen. So congratulations to both of you. Let's go ahead and let's get right into tonight's class, which is not a class. It is an exciting demo from Mr. Dan Kulp. Dan, it's great to be with you. I'm going to shut off my camera because there's really no need for me to show off my beautiful face for that was made better for radio. So I'm going to let you take it away,
All
Dan.
right.
It's all for you now. As
Thanks.
soon as I stop sharing the screen, there you go.
As Cloud was saying, I kind of contacted him kind of last minute just to see if anything important was going on this week that I could kind of override, and he was, as he said, he was more than happy to let me take over this week. So I do apologize if any of you guys were expecting something completely different today. This is kind of a last minute thing, but I thought it was important to kind of get some stuff out to you guys. Um, so I know some of you guys have seen some of the stuff. If you were at Florida Mega Mini or the East Coast Christmas thing down in Philadelphia, I had shown the prototypes of some of the controllers that I've been working on. So some of you guys have seen some of this stuff. I think Pat has one of them already in his lab. He's been kind of testing with some stuff as well, and so. But this is kind of my I finally got some of them in stock, so I can at least get them in my store. And unlike some other vendors, I tend to not really talk about things until I have it available to sell. It's just one of my personal things where I don't like taking money from people until I have something that I can deliver to them. Um, but like I said, this has been stuff I've been working on for quite a while, so I did want to kind of get the stuff out. So I'm going to share my screen if I can figure out how to do that. So we'll start off with a couple little slides first. Nothing too major. Um, so as many of you have been aware, if you've been following any of the Facebook stuff or the latest FPP9 alpha stuff, one of the big things that I've been working on is getting FPP running on the new PocketBeagle 2. So that kind of brings up the question is, what is the PocketBeagle 2? I mean, FPP runs on the Pis and the BeagleBone Blacks and the original PocketBeagle, but the PocketBeagle 2 is pretty much a completely new architecture. Um, so it really isn't exactly a straightforward port, but a lot of the work that we did for the Pi 5 allowed us to really make this go quicker than the Pi 5 stuff. The Pi 5 stuff was hard, but a lot of that work helped us here. So again, what is the Pocket Beagle 2? Well, the Pocket Beagle 1 kind of went out of production early last year. The Octavo chip that was on it, they raised the price to they tripled the price, which made it not economically viable to make any more Pocket Beagle 1s. So the BeagleBoard folks kind of worked really hard to get a replacement for the Pocket Beagle out based on basically chips that they can get available for a reasonable price. And Texas Instrument the Beagle board has worked with TI quite a bit over the years. And TI kind of offered them a good deal on the AM62 series chips, and that's what they settled on. It's used also on the Beagle Play devices, so it's something that the BeagleBoard folks were already kind of familiar with. Um, so they kind of put it into a mostly pin compatible form factor with the PocketBeagle 1. So a lot of the capes and stuff that were designed for the PocketBeagle 1, the new PocketBeagle 2 should be able to just drop right on it, and porting the software, then it should eventually work. And they did a really good job of going through and making sure that, okay, like each pin on the original PocketBeagle was assigned to this functionality. Let's make sure it's assigned to that same functionality on the PocketBeagle 2. So it made designing capes and stuff, or at least being able to take the old designs and work with the new PocketBeagle relatively, or I should say, one less thing that we had to really worry about. As I said, it's not really software compatible. The AM62X chip is a 64-bit chip, as opposed to like all the other Beagle images, which are 32-bit. It requires things like signed bootloaders because it's got all this weird like modern security things and stuff. So the bootloaders have to be signed and all that kind of fun stuff. Um, it's very different from a timing standpoint. So, like if it had when you're doing like the bit banging stuff, right? If you had to wait for 2 clock cycles, you may have to wait for 3 clock cycles, and so there's a lot of work that had to be done to get things, the software stuff ported over. Um, Other things, even other things like UARTs. So like we use the UARTs to output to DMX devices. So on the PocketBeagle 1, it may have been TTYS 2, but on the PocketBeagle 2, that may be TTYS 5 or something. It's still a UART pin, but it's just a matter of the software had to be updated to understand that on the 2, we're going to go output on this one instead. And the Beagle folks have done a good job of trying to alias a lot of that stuff and hiding a lot of that stuff, but there's still a lot of work that needed to be done. One of the other big things I'm really excited about was the fact that the headers come soldered on the PocketBeagle 2. That was one of my pet peeves of the PocketBeagle 1 is the headers. You had to purchase the headers separately and solder them on and all that stuff. It was annoying, and just took time, and it was just kind of annoying. And so they're on there. They're slim headers. They're a lot shorter, so I can when I attach them to a cape, it rides lower and things like that. A little bit nicer. The PocketBeagle 2 was actually designed to have an EMCC. So if you kind of see the picture, this blank area right here is designed to have an EMCC. At the kind of last minute, they decided to not ship it with an EMCC because for cost reasons. They had a very specific price target that they were trying to hit, and they couldn't hit that target with an EMCC, so they pulled that off. I'm hoping in the future that they'll add like a variant that has an EMCC there, but so far that hasn't appeared. We'll see. So my only major complaint with the PocketBeagle 2 after working with it for 6 months or so is the SD card slot location really sucks. The old one had it nicely right up top here. This is the memory chip now, so it's kind of in the way. So the SD card is actually tucked underneath the USB port, and it's kind of hard to get to. So it's a little frustrating. That said, there are these neat little SD card extension. It's not like a cable like we had on the BeagleBone Blacks and stuff. It's a little card that just shifts it out about the length of the card itself, so you can at least get to them easier and stuff like that. So those are available. And I said that's my major complaint with the PocketBeagle 2. Oh, I should actually say, if anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions and stuff. You don't need to wait till the end or anything like that. I have no problems being interrupted if there are some important.
So I have them locked so they can't unmute themselves.
Oh,
But I'll turn that. Okay, they should be able to now.
okay, good. Yeah, I always like to have people, like, if I'm saying something and that people want something clarified, I'd rather clarify it immediately rather than 30 minutes later. So definitely if you have questions, comments, or like that. So anyway, questions? All right, no. All right, so that's a little bit about the PocketBeagle 2. We do have I have a kind of a comparison slide here to kind of see where it sits in kind of a range of stuff. So the BeagleBone Black and the PocketBeagle 1, you can kind of see that they're a single core, old 32-bit A8 core, running at 1 gigahertz, half a gig of RAM. The PRU cores, there's 2 of them at 200 megahertz. The BeagleBone Black had a 4 gigabyte EMCC, which is almost too small now for pretty much anything. Like even the Beagle bone images now for the Pocket Beagle 2 require an 8 gig card. So the 4 gig eMCC is almost kind of pointless. It is a little bit faster than the SD card, but it's not like significantly fast. That said, there's a lot of GPIOs. That's one of the reasons why we use the BeagleBone Black. The Pocket Beagle had 44 of them. The Black had 55. And a bunch of them are directly connected to PRUs. And these are important. So if you're trying to implement various protocols, having the pins directly connected to the PRUs allows very precise controls over the timing. So in general, the more, the better. Excuse me, my allergies are kind of acting up a little bit. And then the analog to digital pins as well. We do use these for things like the voltage sensors and sometimes for the e-fuses and things like that. So being able to figure out the analog stuff is useful. It's a useful utility to have. So like the Black has 7, the Pocket Beagle 1 had 6, and now the new Pocket Beagle 2 you can kind of see is an improvement on pretty much everything except for memory. This is my other kind of complaint with the Pocket Beagle 2 is they did not increase the amount of memory. So it's still just the half gig of RAM. Luckily, FPP is fine with that, so I'm not too concerned with that. The big place this causes slowdown is if you're an actual developer and you're actually compiling FPP. The amount of RAM in there kind of limits the speed. You can only compile basically single-threaded, so you can't take advantage of the multiple cores and stuff like which I'll touch on in a second. The first batch of Pocket Beagle 2s and pretty much what you would get from like myself or Wired Watts or somebody if we have them in stock and things is a dual core A53. These are pretty much the same. The A53 cores are the same cores as are on the Pi 3B Plus, which is why I kind of put that column there. On that initial batch, they're running at 1 gigahertz. That's also the A53 cores are also what's generally used on as the energy efficient cores on things like your phones and tablets and things like that. I mean, it's designed for performance, but really kind of energy efficient and not sucking up a lot of power, things like that. So, the initial batch was the dual core version. TI kind of came back to Beagle board and said they didn't really want them selling them anymore. So they offered to go with the 4-core versions for the future batches. And the 4-core versions actually run a little bit faster at 1.4 gigahertz. For the most part, it doesn't affect anything because, like I said, you can't use the 4 cores for making FPP, and FPP doesn't really require a lot of the cortex of the cores, other than for panels, and I'll cover that a little bit later. But it's just again, it's nice to have. The 4-core also ends up having a GPU on it, which we don't have pins for like HDMI, but they're saying it's like 5 gigaflops of compute power or something, which again, I don't know what we'd use for, but it's there eventually if I ever find a use for it. There's also a 400 megahertz M4. I want to say I think it's M4F. I think I might misspelled that. I don't know. It's another 32-bit core, ARM core. Again, I don't know what we'll use that for. I actually have it disabled right now because it saves a little bit of memory because I haven't figured out what uses yet, but it's there. So again, there's functionality here that I don't know what I'm going to do with in the future, but there's stuff there that I might play with. From my standpoint and for driving pixels, the main thing that's there is the PRU cores, and it's got the same dual, basically 2 PRU cores. They're running faster. We are running them at 250 megahertz. Technically, the AM62s can go up to 333. I did have some timing problems running it at that fast. Trying to do memory accesses. The 250 megahertz runs in sync with one of the other buses, so it doesn't get some latencies. So we're running at 250. So this is again what I was telling you. You had to wait a little bit longer. So what used to take like 4 clock ticks now is 5 clock ticks because the ticks are faster. So we may have to wait a little bit longer. I had to go through and adjust a lot of the timing and things like that. But but for the most part, they're very compatible. There's some additional features that I was able to leverage, but for the most part, it's faster. The SD card is one thing that I'm very impressed with on the PocketBeagle 2. It's significantly faster than any of the other SBCs we have. So it's faster than the Pi 3, faster than the Pi 4, faster than the SD card on the Pi 5, um, which helps it boot quickly. So even though the cores are a little bit slower, the fact that it can load everything off the SD card significantly faster definitely helps, and which I think is kind of awesome. Um, from a GPIO standpoint, there's a lot of like all the pins are there. Again, they're trying to make it as compatible as possible. Um, the reason why there's 52 compared to 44 in the PocketBeagle 1 is in the PocketBeagle 2, they decided to, I want to say, overload a lot of the pins. So on the PocketBeagle 1 and the Beagle 1 Black, the ADC pins were dedicated pins only for analog to digital. On the PocketBeagle 2, if you don't need to use those for analog to digital, you can use those as GPIO pins, which gives you a little bit of extra functionality and stuff. And that's so it gives us a little bit more to play with depending on what the needs are, which is kind of neat. And the PRU pins, we have 20 of them that are shared, which I think is, which basically for those 20 pins, you can assign them to either PRU 0 or PRU 1 as needed. And that flexibility provides a lot of really cool stuff. And I can talk a little bit about that, why that's later. And there are some extras that can be assigned to just PRU 1, I think. But there's a lot there and very flexible and very happy about that. And as you can see, comparing it with the Pi 3, it's just, other than the RAM, it's like really no contest. So, any questions? No.
Hey Dan,
Yeah.
are they considering doing a future release with bigger RAM, or is this?
I don't know. They did have a poll. For those of you guys that don't that know, like I kind of hang out on the Discord channel on one of the Discord channels, like all day. And the specifically reason why I'm on Discord is because Beagle folks are all on a different Discord channel, and I'm talking to them like all the time. They did have a poll in the Discord channel once about a couple months ago, asking about like what size EMCs would be useful, what size memories would be useful. Um, and things like that. I don't know. I've tried to get some commitment out of them because I was willing to actually have a batch made with a 32 gig eMCC on it. I would love to have a 32 gig eMCC and not have to deal with the SD cards. But they haven't really been able to get back to me on that either. So I don't know. Obviously, there's a lot of, with the tariff situation and having to move production from place to place and all that stuff, making commitments around like I don't want to say one-offs, but low volume things is kind of a risky thing that I think they're trying to avoid right now. Which not that I can blame them, to be honest. So I don't know. I wish like if they would have had it, if it would have had 1 gig of RAM instead of the half gig, it would be a significant improvement in my opinion. And of course, a 32 gig eMCC would be awesome as well. So any questions about the PocketBeagle 2? Cool. All right. So anyway, I've been working on this for, like I said, 6 months or so. I had some early prototypes from them, so I got a head start on some stuff. And I'm very excited about these. They're just from a performance standpoint and stuff. It's just a lot of flexibility here, and gives us some ability to do some stuff that we really couldn't do on the BeagleBone Black or PocketBeagle 1, mostly because of the age, which is fine. So there is a question. Does the PocketBeagle 2 work on all of the PB controllers? Yes. Yes, it does to some extent. You do need to have the newer version of FPP, obviously, that like 9 alpha, or there is a kind of a 8.5 dot something rather. It does work, and like I said, that was my goal really at the beginning, was to make sure that because I had a whole inventory of PocketBeagle based stuff that as soon as the PocketBeagle ones went out of stock, I couldn't sell, and so one of my goal was to find something to allow me to obviously sell that inventory. So getting that stuff working was important. That there are a few minor caveats on some of the boards, like the K8 PB. In general, the USB port is right below. Like I actually have the USB-A kind of tucked underneath the micro USB on the PocketBeagle 1. That happens to be right where the SD card is now. So as soon as, and it's fine, but the problem is once you put the PocketBeagle 2 on the board, you can't get access to the SD card at all because the USB-A port is kind of in the way. And so in those cases, that little card that I mentioned, the extender, works perfectly. It basically pulls the SD card out above the USB-A port, so that you can at least get access to it. So they all work. It's just you do have to be careful about getting access to the SD card. Yeah. So hopefully that answers that question.
Dan, will you sell those extenders or have a
Yep.
link?
I added them to my store today.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Haven't been there today.
Yeah. Yep. No, I do have some of the, I mean, unfortunately, I had, again, through the whole tariff stuff, I was hoping to get a whole bunch of them in stock, but I couldn't, because of the tariff situation. My suppliers in China refused to ship anything to the United States for a while, until they figured out how to ship things with all the new tariff rules and things like that. And so things got delayed a little bit. And I don't have a lot of them right now. They are on order, but I have some, just not as much as I would like. So, and that said, the reason why I have them is like if anybody buys like a K8 PB or the K40 from me today, with the PocketBeagle pre-attached, it's going to be a PocketBeagle 2, and because of the SD card slot issue, I have them specific. I basically ship it free with that now because it's almost not usable without it. So that's why I kind of had them. So, yep, good question. All right, so that's about the PocketBeagle. Again, I'm excited about them. This gave me an opportunity to really think about my controllers again. And start designing around them. So the kind of the purpose of tonight was really to introduce the first two new controllers that I have. So the first one we're going to talk about, just have a picture real quick, is a replacement for the PocketScroller and OctoScroller that's designed specifically for the PocketBeagle 2. So this is what it looks like. You can kind of see it's the pocket. See the PocketBeagles right there. It's kind of hard to miss. It's uses the direct PRU pins for everything, which allows me to have very precise control as well as performance of the outputs. This gives us a lot more, basically the ability to push a lot more panels than we did with the BeagleBone Black. The BeagleBone Black, that the PRUs could pretty much handle about 4 or 5 P5 panels per output before they started flickering too bad and stuff like that. The big problem was the single ancient 32-bit ARM core couldn't process the data that much data. So uh, even though the PRU course could, it was really limited to about maybe 18 to 20 total P5 panels on the old BeagleBones. The goal, obviously, with the 4-core processor, we have much, and the 1.4 gigahertz and all that stuff, we have much more capability on the ARM side. So the ARM side can actually basically handle a lot more data than we used to be able to. So we can actually now drive significantly more panels. I've been testing. I don't actually have this number of panels, but if you virtually configure it, you can kind of see what happens. But it can easily handle like 8 panels per output, so 64 panel type displays. So significantly larger displays. Obviously, it's all self-contained running FPP, so there isn't any color light configuration. So those of you guys that are on Macs that really can't configure color light stuff, this is a much simpler option. It just I'm not a big fan of the color light stuff. It's just kind of, it's a really hard thing to configure. So unless you're buying things kind of pre-configured from like Minor or something, it's much harder and much more complex. Where this is all self-contained in FPP. works very well. The other nice thing about this is because we're using the PRU pins, I can do different types of panels. Um, for any of you guys that are have looked at your Pixel store, they have these flexible outdoor panels. They use a completely different protocol than the standard panels. Even though they look like panels and use the same connector, it's a completely different protocol. I got a few of them from Miner and kind of worked with them, and I'm actually able to drive those panels now as well. It's a special PW, like even if you're using a ColorLight card, you have to install a specific firmware on the ColorLight card to be able to drive those panels. They're kind of wacky, but I can actually do that now with this board. I wouldn't have been able to do that with the older PocketBeagle, the old Octo. But with this board, because of the flexibility, I can actually do that. So anyway, going back to it, like my goal with this was really to provide a solution for larger panels, because as the years have gone by, people are putting larger and larger panel displays. And the the original PocketBeagle and the original Octo is great, like for Tune 2 signs and things like that, like 10 to 15 panels. It's great for that. But this, unfortunately, like I say, you start hitting the limits of the single core,
Well,
and that's
one
gone.
Dan, one of the things I want to bring up is the challenges with. Well, let's go back 10 years. A P10 panel was a big deal.
Mhm.
Having a lot of panels was having a P10 panel, and you could
And they were
push.
expensive.
Exactly. And if you had, I can remember Dan's Blackensdorfer. I can't remember his last name. Blickensdorfer. He's from Janae and Hutton, Ohio. Anyway, he had one of the largest panels that we ever saw. He brought it to one of our meetups, and this thing was just ginormous. It probably was, I don't know, like a 6 by 8.
It was a 64 panel board. It was 4 foot by 8 foot,
Yeah.
or roughly.
Okay.
Yeah. So now we get into today where you have P5s and now you have P2.5s or
Yep.
P2s or really ridiculous small but very high density panels. And so that's I think is what most everybody's going to be interested is more pixels are better and
Yep.
what it can get into and what it can do. So that's what's exciting about this is because I ran into that same limit last year when we did the last whenever you wrote this the last time with the
Yep.
with the OctaScroller,
Mhm.
right? And so that was the challenge with having P5 panels. So that's I think I share that with everybody. So I'll let you go ahead and continue.
Yep. No, it's like I said, it was a great solution 10 years ago, for P5s and stuff like that. But as like you go from P5 to or P10 to P5, it's 4 times the amount of data. And that core just couldn't keep up. And now we have much more functionality here. And the new driver for this is actually completely multi-threaded and can handle, like, it'll break the processing up across the 4 cores. Again, the ARM side is not going to be the challenge. It's really more the protocol itself going out to the panels, and before you start seeing flickering and stuff. So, technology-wise, this is a huge step in the right direction, like a huge improvement, and I'm very happy about that. So, a couple of other big things that I want to point out on this board. Obviously, it's got the standard OLED that I have on pretty much all my boards, other than the K2. The K2 Pi Zero thing doesn't have an OLED, but pretty much everything else does. It does have an RTC kind of tucked under there. You can kind of see the battery sticking out there, so it can do your keep time and all that stuff, so it can run on a schedule or if it need be. I do have some GPIO pins pulled out, so if you have push buttons, like you want to have a push button that suddenly like displays something on your panels, feel free to connect it directly here. There's 8 GPIO pins and the I2C bus is available as well, so you can kind of do some fun things there. Obviously, all the push buttons, these are kind of standard for the OLED display. I'm going to come back to this in a second. It has a 4-port USB hub built in, so you have 3 USB ports available, 1 vertical and 2. This is a 2 stacked horizontally out the top. So depending on like what adapters you have and which direction you need to go. Like if you don't have space here, you can put a little Wi-Fi adapter here or vice versa or whatever. So you have 3 USB ports there. The fourth USB port is connected over here to gigabit Ethernet. So this is one of the big problems with the PocketBeagles is they don't have any connectivity at all. There's no Wi-Fi, there's no Ethernet, basically nothing. And that's one of the issues with trying to base a controller design around it is the lack of Ethernet is really kind of a problem. And obviously, for those of us that go completely Wi-Fi, it's not a big deal because we're going to throw a Wi-Fi adapter on it anyway. But for a lot of people, that's kind of an issue. So the board now actually has a gigabit Ethernet. It is attached to USB 2 bus, so you're only going to get about 300 megabits out of it. But still, that's 3 times faster than pretty much any other controller available in the market at this point. So for those of you that are built like uploading large FSCQ files or whatever, I guess that can help a little bit. so, so that's kind of, and then of course we have the power inputs and stuff like that. So 5-volt going in and stuff like that. So that's the new PocketScroller. A lot of technology there. It was a neat learning experience for me. For those of you guys that don't know, I have zero background in no background in electrical engineering or anything like that. My background is in chemical engineering and computer science. So getting into like gigabit Ethernet, you have to deal with things like impedance controls, and the signals are so fast that traces have to be like within like a millimeter of each other and stuff like that. It's very, very specific, and I had to learn a lot on this, and it was kind of exciting. Like it's a type of challenges that I really like to embrace because it's fun and challenging and gets my mind working and doing all kinds of new stuff. But it was a challenge in a fun way. So, but
How many panels do you say per port again?
um, basically, you should be able to do about 8 P5 panels per output, so 64 panels. Again, it's not the ARM side that's gonna be the problem. Um, the way panels work is they shift data out. So you got to shift the data out the lines. And this will shift it out at about 10 megahertz, which is roughly equivalent to what the xLights are doing. Beyond, like once you get beyond like 8 or 9 panels, it takes so long to shift all that data out, even at 10 megahertz, that can sometimes, depending on the panel, you'll start seeing a little bit of flicker. Um, Again, it just depends on the panels. Like the outdoor panels tend to work better because their scan rates are different. But you just kind of have to give it a try and see. I want to say 64 for most like indoor style panels, and then some of the outdoor panels that are just wacky. It's kind of hard to gauge.
Okay. And
The
are these available yet?
well, that's the next question, but
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm jumping the gun. Apologize.
No, that's fine. Yeah, these will be in my store tomorrow. I do have these things. I have a bunch of them sitting here. I've spent some of the time this afternoon actually flashing the EPROMs and stuff on them. So yeah, they will be for sale tomorrow, most likely. So, and actually, let me stop sharing that real quick, and I'll just jump over there since you asked about it. Where is that group? So, no, that's the other one. Where is PocketScroller? So yeah, this will be in my store. It's actually in the store now, but it's not in the, like, if you actually go to this URL, you can actually order it now. It's there. So, and again, you can get it with the PocketBeagle pre-mounted and the SD card and stuff like that. The SD card for this will be the 9.0 Alpha 1 that was released on this past weekend because it needs some of the new stuff that's available on the master branch. We're talking bleeding edge stuff, so it will be that. So, and if you scroll down here, there's a bunch of detail. Like I tried to describe as in depth as much of the details. It does have the E line. So for as we mentioned, like the P2, the P2.5s that are the 132 scan, there is the E line there. That said, you can't, because of the E-line means the 132 scan basically means at any given time only one row out of every 32 is lit. When you start getting to 132 scan, you start seeing a lot of flickering as soon as you get beyond like 2 panels, 3 panels. And the P2 panels are so small that it's like 2 or 3 times 8 is still it's a relatively small display. But it can run them depending on what you're trying to do. So kind of going down, like I said, we have the gigabit, we have the OLED. Talks a little about the stuff. But this is the Minor's P4 flexible things. Is this new FM6363C PWM panel? So a lot of details here. Again, in the store, I will be adding it to the general search and stuff probably tomorrow morning because my gut feeling it'll be too late tonight. So that's the first board. Any questions on that one? What? So all right. So nothing. No big questions. All right, so we'll go to the next one. I won't even switch back. I'll just go right over to there. So the second one is, this is the big one that I think a lot of people have been waiting for, is the K32 Max. So this is a really expensive board, big board. It's basically a rethinking, kind of like a merging of the latest K16 with the eFuses and all that stuff, with the ideas from the K32, and just basically just completely rethinking about, okay, what is the base of my controllers going forward. And I'm calling it the Max because it pretty much is my kitchen sink of controllers. It's pretty much got everything in it. I'm hoping over time to have lower ends, and again, I'm a Mac person, so this is the Max, and I'm starting at the top and kind of going down. There will probably be a Pro and a regular level at some point. I just haven't really completely finished all that stuff, and again, tariffs and all that muck. But for the most part, this is the I mean to say top of the line controller, completely top of the line controller available today. There's nothing that will compete with it. So start off with, we'll start at the bottom here. It's a 32, so we have 32 local ports. They are in banks of 4 specifically because they are 6 amp eFuses. So 4 outputs at 6 amps is 24 amps. So you're under the 30 amp spec of the screw terminals. For those of you that are doing a lot of math, that's a lot of amps that can go through this board. What's it, like 192 amps? If you're trying to push everything through. So that's a lot of power. So this is a 4-layer board. All 4 layers are 2-ounce copper for any of you guys that are familiar with that. So it's a heavy board, very thick, very stiff, but really designed for the fact that you can push a boatload of power through this thing. Not again, you're gonna generate heat and all that stuff pushing that much through, but the board is designed for that. So again, 32 local ports. They're all 5 to 24 volt, so you can handle the new 24 volt pixels. Again, 6 amps per port. A lot of stuff there. Going up the board, we also have 8 differential outputs. That's another 32 outputs. So it's a total of 64 strings of data that this can output. And these are all bi-directional differential ports. So if you have the Falcon V5 smart receivers that have the eFuses on them, it will communicate with them fine and can query the eFuse states, reset them, do the pixel counting, all that stuff that the Falcon V5 smart receivers. I am not selling the V5s right now. Because I only had the one controller that could talk to them, but now that I have more controllers that can talk to them, I probably will go back to Dave Pitts and see if we can start stocking them as well. So, but we'll see. Not sure. But anyway, so that's 64 strings. There's no banks or anything like that, so it's the full 800 pixels per string at 40 frames per second. It's all PRU based, so if you want to run at 100 frames per second, that's fine. Obviously, your pixel counts go down and all that stuff, but it's all very flexible. Again, there's nothing else that can really compare from the number of strings and number of pixels and stuff just from that. So that's the pixel output stuff. Moving around the board, again, we see our GPIO block. Again, a bunch of pins available. Feel free to do triggers and all kinds of fun things like that. Real-time clock and the OLED, just like the previous board, and push buttons, just like the PocketScroller. We have two DMX outputs on here. Again, for moving heads or other DMX devices, there's two outputs there. RJ45 this time, so no custom cables or anything like that. They just kind of plug them in and work. We have our gigabit Ethernet again. So again, gigabit. The same three USB ports. Okay, keep going around. We have audio. So this is the PCM 5102 DAC, which is what I've used on the old 32 and the old 16. Jason tested that, and it's the output as clean as the Sound Blaster. So there's no real need for the Sound Blaster. You can use Sound Blaster if you want, but it's there. And then there's the header for my little FM transmitter. Again, that's an option if you want it. Again, it's not a great transmitter, but it does work for some people. So we have the audio built in. And going down here, we also have a fan connector. It takes the 5-volt and it's a 4-pin, so it does the PWM. There's some ways of setting temperatures and stuff to go like slow, medium, high on the fans and stuff like that. So again, the people have asked about how they cool things, and if you have 192 amps of power going through, you're going to be generating a lot of heat. There's obviously going to be a lot of power supplies in your box, etc. Having a fan that you can kind of push some of that out and control might be a good thing. This is the PocketBeagle. You can this picture I took actually had the SD card extender in it, so you can kind of see it kind of pulls the SD card out a little bit, so you can kind of get access to it. So that's just kind of shows it in place. A couple of things I should also mention, I probably could have mentioned on the PocketScroller as well. The USB hub is wired as a powered USB hub. I did up the power buck to handle a little bit more power, particularly because we have a 5-volt fan on here as well as powered USB. So if you do want a Sound Blaster on there, sound and Wi-Fi and whatever else, LoRa adapters, things like that, power to those ports won't be an issue either. It's not like the old BeagleBone Black where the Sound Blasters would sometimes drop out because of power issues and things like that. That's definitely not a problem here. So anyway, that's the 32 Max. Like I said, it's pretty much got everything that I've kind of ever put into a board before. There's a lot of stuff here. There's signals going all over the place, but it's also because of that, it's also very expensive. E-fuses, for those of you guys that don't know, the 6-amp 24-volt capable e-fuses add about $2 per port to a board compared to the blade fuses. So this is a relatively expensive board. But for those people that really like the e-fuses, it definitely provides a lot of functionality and capability that you don't have like with the blade fuses and stuff. So again, like I said, this is the Max. Over time, as I start selling these and stuff like that, I hope to have a level below a pro level, which would pretty much be the same thing, but probably with blade fuses. I don't know. I'm still working on things like that. I got to get this stuff selling first, and before I really figure out some of the other things. But it's definitely this is the like flagship local port controller at this point. So, any questions on it?
Is
So-
Justin available as well?
Okay, availability. I was hoping the answer is going to be yes. They were supposedly shipped to me last Friday morning, but apparently China went on a 4-day weekend. There was some holiday in China. I don't know what the details are. Um, so they just left Hong. They got to Hong Kong, and then they left Hong Kong today. So I'm hoping to have them like in my hands probably Monday or Tuesday of next week. Uh, it's customs. It may be more like I just don't know. And sometimes things fly through customs
Hmm.
in an hour, and other times it's like 6 days. You just don't know.
Yeah, when you were chatting with me on Friday, was it Friday?
Yeah,
That's you let me know on Friday, and you were very certain that everything was gonna just it was gonna be it was just gonna go as planned.
yeah,
And but you know what, I have to say, like I did order some things off of AliExpress within the past month or so. Everything's come out pretty quick and has been released pretty
yeah,
quick.
yeah.
So I don't think if it's behind, it's going to be just a bit behind. I don't think you're going to wait too much
Yeah,
for
like I
that.
said, I'm expecting most likely Monday or Tuesday of next week I will have them. And the big question really is pricing and like I said, if you go to that URL, and you can kind of see some preliminary pricing. I This isn't final because I don't have the final DHL like tariff bill, um, until it gets to customs and gets processed and stuff. I don't know the final. I have a good estimate based on what I paid in tariffs for the PocketScroller, which is what I'm basing this off of. Um, but it's also customs. They sometimes do wacky things, I never understand how they get some of their numbers. I just don't know. So this is it should be in this ballpark. Like again, this is fully configured. Should be around there. But again, by next Tuesday when I have them in stock, it may change based on what DHL decides to charge me. So
So so if we were just to break it down by what we see with the new Max,
mhm.
um, you've got 32 local ports.
Yep.
You've got two differential expansions. So an
Well,
additional, which you have eight additional outputs. So
that's yeah, that's another 32 strings. Yeah.
and so that's 64 outputs total that is
Yes.
possible,
Yep.
and that's not even getting into the smart side of it, not even pushing smart, just
Oh, yeah, yeah, and
just
these are all smart capable, so you can put chain 6 smart receivers on each of these and do zillion. Like I don't know how many of them, but that would be it'd just be a lot.
I'm very impressed with the upgrade in the Beagle, the Pocket Beagle 2. That that allows you to be able to really expand on the K32. I mean, this is a hopped up K32.
Yeah, yeah,
This is a very hopped up K32. It's very enticing. I've had very good success with my Pocket Beagle controllers. They're the ones that, and I told you this when we were at the East Coast Christmas show. Those are the ones that have been by far the most reliable.
yeah,
I could never complain about them, not once. And so I'm very excited to see these come out. This is going to
yeah,
be, I think this is going to be a very big and positive change in the community, especially the fact that you can now engage significant number more of the P5 panels, which is something that a lot of people are out for.
yeah,
So I'm excited
yeah.
about that. That's definitely something I'm going to look forward to picking up. Absolutely, without a doubt.
So, I mean, obviously, the next question I'm sure people are going to ask is what's next. And I kind of mentioned like there'll be the 32 Pro and a 32. I don't beyond that, I don't know. I mean, I have inventory of the K16s, but as they dwindle, obviously I'll have to rethink those, and it may just be that I kind of cut this bottom section off, and suddenly you have a K16 Max that's same hole patterns type thing. And I don't know. There's still a lot of stuff that I gotta work through. Obviously, my goal for the first half of this year was really the K32 Max. It's the flagship. And then how I chop things off of here to make other controllers or whatever is something that we'll deal with as time comes and stuff like that. It's just, obviously there's a lot of cost involved in creating a new controller, a lot of time, and so this was the first one to get out, and over time, as I go through my inventory and through the other controllers, uh, we'll see what happens.
I like that you powered the USB. That's a nice, and I know you put a ton of time into this, and you're like, wow, you're impressed by one little trace that I added, but that helps out a lot. You have no idea.
Uh,
Because one of my
it-
biggest pet peeves is like the majority of your new switches that you buy, right? They're all
yeah.
USB, and it's like if I just had a USB, I wouldn't have to cut this cord and hook it to the power supply. I could just plug
Right.
it in, just powered it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, there's that, and I'm sure if Jason was Rasmussen was on here, because his biggest problem is the sound blasters, like they draw power and then they suddenly cut off in the middle of things, and you get weird things, and a lot of it's power related, and I'm like, that's yeah.
Yeah.
So
But I mean, eliminate the need for a sound blaster now on here is a nice
yes.
change as well. And then I heard you say about your FM transmitter. Now, so for most people trying to figure, because I know some of this that Dan goes over. Yeah, he might explain it in a way that you've been in the hobby for a year, but really with this board, with using FPP, you'd be able to make this an entire show controller. So
Yes.
with you being able to add the FM transmitter and having the audio out as well, you could pick to hook it to a speaker or output it to FM. You can schedule in these things. So you could literally have this thing underneath your mega tree, running your mega tree, and then 8 receivers just once coming off of this going into different areas of your yard.
Mm-hmm.
And now you can daisy chain. So when he says daisy chain, his receivers have 2 Ethernet ports on it. So you can go into one receiver, come out, and go to another. So really, I mean, this thing could be your one controller for your entire show. And this is it. There's no, I need to go get my other controller. This is it. This is the entire show.
Yeah, about the only two things really this can't do are obviously panels, which I have another controller for that. Um, and then if you're using like a projector for like virtual matrices and stuff like that, it can't do that because we don't have an HDMI or anything like that.
Right.
So those are the two common things that you'll see in people's displays now that this can't do.
But I don't think you need to, like, that situation's already solved. I mean,
Yes.
the regular
Yeah.
Beagle, the regular Pi, anybody can get those, and those are going to
Yep.
work just fine for that situation.
Yep.
This is a flex controller. Like, this is truly a flex controller. Like, it's going to cover every base, just like Rob said. You put this under the tree. You have, in my case, I mean, just even drawing out in the back of my head what my layout is. I had 2 additional controllers in the yard running a bunch of stuff that were in that side of the yard. There are all the receiver ports for them, and simply output to them. I'm still going to run a network cable. I'm still going to run the power over to those props. I mean, this really does cover a very large portion of the show. And the other thing too that's very you kind of glazed over it, but you have the option to add 8 power supplies into one enclosure to marry this into one controller, one board. And the amount of power that you can put out of the outputs, what's the max, what's the E fuse going to blow at whenever you put
It's 6 amps. So like I said, with all these ports, it's 192 amps of power, which is more than your typical 20 amp circuit on your house.
So you put, let's say you put 500, 600, 800. The max is that you have a lot of pixels that you can do on one output.
Yeah.
If you're inclined to do the power injection, you can really get the most out of this board. You obviously you're going to need some power injection points and stuff, but
So 800 is the max. 800 is the max for 40 frames. If you want to do 20 frames, you can't get 16 out of it.
Right.
Yes.
Right. I didn't want to. I didn't
But
want to get into.
you can go above that. These boards are powerhouses. So.
Right. Yeah, I didn't want to get into like massive numbers. I just wanted to keep it grounded, even at 800. I mean, like, power inject something that has 800 pixels. That's a job in and of itself, right? So you have 4 outputs. That's like a receiver. That's a regular receiver. But you have 4 outputs. You can put a 600 pixel prop or an 800 pixel prop on the end of that thing and run it with 4 ports. You know what I mean? Like, this is a very This is I like the idea of this. I like the idea of this whenever you showed it at the show. Um,
Yeah, you got to see the prototypes and stuff. So a lot of people didn't. So
but the concept and just in general the amount of power, like you really don't have to worry about power, and that's one of the biggest considerations for people who are new in the hobby. And one of the things that we are faced with is we always recommend to people, don't overdo it with the number of pixels on one power supply. Well, now you can put 8 power supplies. This is the first controller that has 32 outputs with 8 power supply individual hookups. That's impressive.
I mean, that said, I mean, obviously, if you have like a 600-watt power supply, that can power 2 of these
Mhm.
banks easily. I mean, that's exactly basically 600 watts is 48 amps, which is
True.
exactly 8 ports. So
True.
so for the 600-watt power supplies is really the ideal almost. So
No, I'm very, very, very impressed. Very impressed.
thank you.
Any questions out there for Dan?
Hey, Dan,
Yeah.
one of the things that we hear on the Falcons is the daisy chain in and out Ethernet. And we know there still is, rightfully or wrongly,
Yep.
there's still people that don't believe in Wi-Fi, right, with multi-sync because they don't understand it, right? But if they wire it, have you considered, or was that a considering factor to have an in and out to make the wiring easier for those that do?
The issue there, there's a lot of cost involved in that, particularly because I need to connect via USB. Um, Technically, the PocketBeagle 2 does have on it on the actual header pins the RGMII signals, which could be used off to a 3-port switch and then provide the 2 outs and stuff like that. So it could have been done that way, but then you lose 14 pins of GPIOs off the headers, which I needed for obviously other use. There's a lot of signals on this board. There's a lot of signals. So I just didn't. It really would have added a significant amount of cost, and it would have had problems with the USB and things like that. So it really. It was a low priority thing, and it just as I've mentioned before, electrical engineering is not my thing, and even I went through four prototypes before I got the Ethernet working the first time, because it was a new experience for me, and I had to learn a whole bunch of stuff, and I had to learn more about KiCad and how it handles differential traces and things like that, and saw a lot of sample projects and stuff, and that would have just been like one level more complex than what I was willing to take on at this point. Not
There's
sure if
a
that helped.
there's a good question in chat. Um, it says, what physical dimension is the K32 Max?
Um,
So, because that begs the question, what do we install this in?
yeah, it's like 7 wide by like 8.5 tall or something like that. Um, Actually, I have it in KiCad someplace. Let me just bring it up real quick.
So while he's looking that up, how many people have seen this board now and they're like, "Yep, this is my controller for this year"? Is there some new folks in here that's like, how am I getting started? And I think I just found my answer.
So officially, it is 6.6 inches wide and 8 inches tall, according to the measurements in KiCad.
So 6 by 8.
6.6 by 8.
6.6 by 8.
Yep.
That's a good sized footprint.
So I mean, Ken does have one of the prototypes of these, and so he's kind of committed to creating new like mounting plates specifically for these, and new mounting systems and stuff. So hopefully in a few weeks or whatever, you'll be able to go off to Wired Watts and click on his like build a controller link. He's got an awesome build a controller link where you can he'll provide the recommended box, the power supplies, and all that mounting hardware and all that stuff. And again, give him a few weeks to get up to speed, but he'll get there.
With all those power supplies, you will need the, enclosure that it's, 1.5 man size. The
Yeah.
one that the Home Depot started selling now.
You'll need something big, that's for sure.
Just put it in a Milwaukee pack out.
But my bigger concern again is a lot of you like that only have 15 amp circuits in your house. Are you going to be hitting that? That's going to be a bigger question.
No, that's a good point. Of course, we were talked about this last week. Actually, we talked about this at the mini over the weekend at the Frozen Mini. That was one of the points of discussion was how many outlets do you have dedicated to your show, and if you are literally maxing out this controller, that's a lot of power that goes through it. And to be fair, obviously you get a larger power supply that runs, maybe half the board or whatever, and it can handle that fine, but you still have to plug the thing in, and it still has to have the juice to pull from. So that is a huge consideration. Anybody who's new to the show scene, or if this is your first time, your first year or your second year, and you're like, man, I'm blowing up my show this year. Make sure you have circuits that are dedicated to doing this, because the power isn't the hard part until it becomes the hard part. And for example, Dale last year started running into some issues whenever he was running a lot of stuff on one or two outputs, and he learned that he was going to need to have new power installed into his outputs outside. Yeah, so Dale was the guinea pig for sure, but yeah, Dan, you're absolutely 100% correct.
So anyway, 9:30, 1 hour. That's what I generally target, so I did pretty good this time. I'm usually way long, so.
Well, any questions for Dan? Dan, it's awesome to have.
I see a question about Wired Watts. I will be shipping him the PocketScrollers tomorrow, most likely, so he'll have them probably in his store early next week. The K32s, again, once I get them in, I'll be shipping him a bunch. And from the kits, I don't know. Ken's usually really good about getting things designed, and he's kind of this. Nice thing about this time of year is it's just beginning to ramp up, so it's not super busy right now, so he should have some time. I don't want to speak for him, but I'll speak for him.
So Dale asked, he said, he asked Miner, and Miner answered, will the larger YPS controller box work with this? And he said, most definitely. So he'll have to update the acrylic footprint for it, I'm sure. So good deal. Good deal. Any other questions? Keep rolling them in. Again, super exciting. I'm a fan for both of them. I'm a fan of the PocketBeagle. I would absolutely, hands down, can't complain about it. So there it is, guys. Any questions? Go ahead, throw them in chat. If you're,
Hey, Dan.
Oh, go ahead.
Yep.
Hey, with all the new capabilities of the PocketBeagle 2, are we going to a inevitability where FPP won't be supported by the BeagleBone Black or the PocketBeagle 1 in the future?
I don't see that happening because there's so many BeagleBone Blacks and PocketBeagle controllers out there. There's just a ton of them. And honestly, the platform I'd see us drop first is the 32-bit Raspberry Pis, because there's less of them to some extent. Because you're really talking the Pi 1, the Pi 2s, and the original Pi Zeros, the Pi Zero W type. Not the Pi Zero W2, but the Pi Zero. That would be the one I'd see dropping first, but again, I don't see that happening anytime in the next 3 or 4 years either. So, that said, it's more work for me because now I have to do 3 images per release rather than 2 images. So there is more work for me doing these releases and stuff, but it's worth it. Like again, the new functionality here is just worth it. There is
Well-
one question that nobody asked that I was expecting. Because I was expecting somebody to ask if there's a replacement for the BeagleBone Black coming. Like, we obviously have the replacement for the Pocket Beagle 1. But nobody asked that question, so I won't answer it.
Well, they.
Well,
I
you
was.
mentioned that you would just cut the bottom 16 ports off of this one.
Yeah, I kind of figured that was going to eventually take shape with down the road whenever you actually had some time. I figured that was why we didn't ask the question.
Yeah. Now, it's really comes down to the Beagle board folks. When the Pocket Beagle 1 went out of stock and they couldn't manufacture them anymore, they had to prioritize the Pocket Beagle 2. I do know there was an effort started roughly at the same time to do a replacement of the BeagleBone Black, but it got stalled because they had to prioritize this because there was nothing, there wasn't a replacement. There was just nothing available. I do not know if they're getting back to doing that. I do know there's another company that has been working on what they're calling a BeagleBone Violet, which is the same processor as the Pocket Beagle 2, but in the BeagleBone Black format or form factor with the pins and all that stuff. I don't know the status on that either, but my gut feeling is at some point there will be a BeagleBone Black form factor using the AM62 as well. I just don't know when. That said, I'm very excited. I like the Pocket Beagle form factor. It's nice and small, and allows me to build things around it. It doesn't have the issue of the SD card being way tucked underneath your controller and all that stuff. So my plans, at least for the immediate future, is around the Pocket Beagle 2 stuff.
I concur 100%. I'm way more excited over the Pocket Beagle. We haven't heard anything about a BeagleBone Black 2 coming out, have we? Or
That's what I was just talking about. It's like I don't know.
That's why this is kind of exciting because, well, they're being forced to update a board that they didn't have a reason to update until
I was talking to the Beagle board folks, and like a majority of their money comes from sales of BeagleBone Blacks. Even though it's an ancient computer, they sell more of those than anything else that they have. And they don't.
Isn't that crazy? And when was that board released?
Like 2013 or something like that. It was like ancient.
And technology has surpassed that probably 100-fold by now.
Yeah, but
it's still a good board.
Yeah, it's a great board, and they sell so many of them each month that it's like they don't want to disrupt that income type stream type thing with a risky. So whatever comes out, like I'm gonna say when it comes out in the same form factor, it's gonna have to be 100% solid to not disrupt that stream type thing. Like it's gonna have to be completely compatible and stuff like that. So they've got to get that right. They got to get that right.
It would be incredible to be able to produce the same results that you can get from the Pocket Beagle 2 and enhance and make a modern Pocket Beagle or a modern BeagleBone Black. Like, it always blew my mind that board never got an update. But yet we constantly see the updates from the Raspberry Pi. We've seen the 3, the 4, the 5, and the gigabit variants on top of that. And it's always kind of struck me as that's very strange that they never did the update. But it makes sense when you've got something and it works. There's no reason to change it.
So one last question I'll have, because I heard you and Alex both mention about the Wi-Fi on these and adding a dongle to them to give them Wi-Fi. So for everyone on here listening, if you put a Wi-Fi dongle on this, Dan, how many boards is the max of that Wi-Fi, and what's the distance in between boards? And I assume you have some kind of router that you're using to project the signal out through the yard or something.
Well, I personally have a complete Unify system in my house. So like I have a Dream Machine Pro is my router and everything, and then I have 4 access points scattered throughout. One of them dedicated to my. One of them from January to September is set for just a general access point, but when I set up for Halloween, I dedicate that one specifically only to my show. Um, I only use my the adapters that are in my store. So if I go over to my store, I only use these pretty much on my larger controllers and these on my K4s. And I only have my show running on 5 gigahertz. I don't use the 2.4 because of interference and all kinds of stuff like that. So that one access point I put specifically only for 5 gigahertz. I do sacrifice a little bit of range because of that, but it works really well for me. Um, Again, and I have to say for me because everybody like Wi-Fi is wacky. What works for one person may not work for another. Um, I know various people have been very successful with all kinds of wacky setups, and like I personally have seen a lot of people struggle with like mesh things, like the arrow meshes and stuff like that. But then I've also seen people have been very successful with them. So I don't know. I really don't know. Like I said, to me, the bigger issue is the adapter, the Wi-Fi adapter. Like, I strongly recommend the Realtek 8112 BU chipset. It just works. Uh, it goes into access point mode easily, so you can configure things. It locks on to the 5 gigahertz really well. The Linux drivers are really good. Whereas you go to Amazon and buy whatever is cheap, even though it may say Linux compatible, yeah, it may or may not be. It may work, kind of. I don't know. Like I said, I always tell people if you're looking for Wi-Fi, grab that chipset. There's another one that's really good, MediaTek something. I can't remember the numbers on that. I'd have to look it up. That's also really good, but I can't get them in this form factor. I also like this form factor. So
Now, I assume you could put this on the outside. I assume that antenna screws on, so you could probably get a coaxial wire to run it to the
you
outside.
could. The other thing that I do is I get a 15-foot USB extension cord and basically have the USB extension cord run out of the box, and then stick this on the end of it, and then waterproof the whole. Like I take a
Heat shrink or something like
the heat shrink stuff and like wrap the whole adapter and stuff, and then stick that up in a tree. So like my
Yeah.
Tune sign, which is at the end of my driveway, barely gets a signal. So I use a 15-20 foot USB cable, and then stick it up in the tree. So it's one way of doing it. My way of doing it.
So for somebody that doesn't have like a Ubiquity setup, right?
Yep.
What would you recommend for them? So they would buy this board and then they would buy a router that they could put in AP mode and just put it on the output of it?
Yeah, or like just a dedicated access. There are just access points and stuff like that. But yeah, and then get that as close to the front of your yard as you can. Like my yard access point is in the very front of my garage because that's the frontmost part of my house.
Yeah, and they make like and for like an access point for for everyone listening, some of them you can get PoE little adapter on them that'll
Yep.
run up and they're already waterproof to be outside, so you can literally put it on the front of your porch outside and run that to it just for power. But no, that's great. So I mean that kind of eliminates your Ethernet wires, and I assume you're just running these in DHCP mode then. So you're just
Yep.
logging into the access point, and that's it.
Yep. Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah, I don't do static IPs for anything. I like everything in my show this year. I had 11 FPP instances out there. Everything was Wi-Fi. Everything was DHCP. Again, everything was 5 gigahertz connecting to the access point. Now for me, it just works. So,
Yeah.
So to be clear, I think the big confusion is people think that you're sending channel data, DDP or E131 over Wi-Fi. You don't. You use FPP and you send multi-sync.
Yep.
You do initially send the FSIC initially, right? Off hours, whatever long it takes. If you have a bad, Wi-Fi, doesn't matter. But during the show, you send very small packets And that's where people get confused. I don't want to run my show Wi-Fi. You're not really running your Wi-Fi. You're
So
running.
what Alex is saying with multi-sync, most of you probably refer to it as player mode and remote mode. So that's what he's talking. You'll have one unit that controls everything, and all the rest of them listen for that one unit to tell them what to do. So each instance will have its dedicated files on it.
And it's sending a sync packet, right?
Yep.
And that's it. It's only sending one packet of data to say, hey, be here now. Okay, be here now. Okay, be here now. And that's all it's doing. It's not transmitting E131.
I mean, that said, one thing to mention is Wi-Fi, like these adapters on the 5 gigahertz band, it is going to go up. They say 867 megabits per second, but we're talking USB 2 ports on both the BeagleBone Black and the PocketBeagle 2. So it is really about 300 megabits per second, which is faster than your 100 megabit Ethernet that most controllers are using. So you really could do some level of like channel data. It's just there are going to be weird glitch. Like as a car drives by, you may get a little bit of a glitch, like bad alternators or whatever, or like that's the big thing that you want, that going with the sync packets kind of eliminates is some of the weird glitches. And the bandwidth is there. It's just you're because it's actually higher bandwidth than you would have going to like any of the other controllers, but it's more of the glitches.
So I think with that, we're going to wrap it up. We'll still be in the room to ask questions. So everybody out there in Facebook land and YouTube land, come join the room, ask questions. It seems like there is a good bit of the FPP team in here, so it just doesn't go to Kulp boards. You can pretty much bounce ideas off the whole entire crew. So jump into the room and ask your questions. Clyde, you got anything going out?
I thank everybody for being here tonight. Dan, I'm going to pass it off to you and let you sign everybody out.
Now, I said I can hang around for a little bit longer, another 10 minutes or so, if anybody else has any other questions like that. But I know other than that, like thank you for being here. Thanks for the great questions, a lot of great questions, and hopefully this is setting. In my view, I'm hoping this is setting me up for the next couple years of controller design coming from me. So.
Well, we certainly look forward to hearing more about what comes after this, but actually getting our hands on some of these, maybe doing one night we can do a hands-on walkthrough with it, and everybody gets to see it in action, especially with me, you know, FPP for Dummies and everything. So, all right, guys, everybody.
As long as you promise not to break it.
I've done pretty good the past 2 years. Not terrible, but you know.
Yeah.
I still have my moments, but it is what it is. All right, guys. Thank you for being here, everybody. You're welcome to stick around. Dan's gonna stick around for a little bit. We're gonna go after that. We'll go to open mic night, which is our every week we do this. If you have questions, by all means, you can raise your hand. Just jump in. After a while, if the room gets a little bit quiet, we start chatting and relaxing and enjoying company with each other. So we, just start having a good time. And then if you have a question, you just jump in and join along. So thanks for being here, Dan. Robert, thank you. And YouTube, we're going to let you go. Facebook, we're going to let you go. Have a good evening. And thank you all for being here. Take care and goodbye for now.